Okay, here we are. We are going through the whole Bible in a year. And we've said that we're doing it at breakneck speed. We said that we're in the train. We're going 230 miles an hour, passing things by, but we're taking it all in. Our eyes are adjusting and we're watching everything and seeing everything and taking it all in. And so we can do the overall scripture so we can place all of the things in the right places and understand the whole story of what's going on. Well, we're in a critical chapter right now. In fact, this is one of the most important chapters in the Bible if you want to understand the whole book. If you want to understand what's going on, understand the whole plan, understand everything that's going on. Well, what's happened so far? We're going to do that again? Yeah, let's do it again. What's happened so far? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:26, he created people. Chapter 12 of Genesis, he called Abraham and told Abraham that he was going to be the one who was going to start the rescue plan, that through his family tree, the Messiah would come. Jesus, the Messiah, would come. Goes on in his family, they grow to 70 people. They go down into Egypt because of a famine. They stay there for 400 years. And then they come out. They come out in the book of Exodus. They come out, maybe a couple of million of them. And when they come out, they end up at Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, God gives them the commandments. And this is how we're going to live. He gives them the covenant. If you do this, I'll do that. And yes, we will be your people. We'll do that. Well, they're at Mount Sinai, and he's promised them they're going into the promised land. 11-day journey. Ends up taking them 40 years. Well, they finally get in there, though, 40 years later. And when they get in there, we get to the book of Joshua. And Joshua leads them in by faith. He's a man of strong faith and takes the territory, takes the land, and then ends up dividing it up among the tribes. Well, the tribes are who? The tribes are the 12 sons of, remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And remember, Jacob has these kids, 12 of them. And now they've become tribes. They've become large groups of people, large masses of people. And so those tribes are settling. And, when they're settling in there, we're talking about, settling huge numbers, 100,000 people, from this particular tribe, this particular son, this particular kid, one of the 12. Divide up the land, and they're all living in the land. Well, Joshua, they settle in the land for the most part, and we get to the next book called Judges. And what happens in Judges is that God is their king. Remember, back in Sinai, they made the commitment that God would be their king, and they would obey God, and he gave them the rules and told them how to live, and God is the king. And they get into Judges, but they get into trouble. They turn away from the Lord, and we start this whole cycle in Judges, that there'd be a period of prosperity and of peace and everything's good, and they forget the Lord. And after they forget the Lord, they're overcome by their enemies, and they call out to God, and God raises somebody up, one of these people that are called judges, military leaders, and they free them. And there's again peace and prosperity. And it happens again. How long do these cycles last? Sometimes these cycles last for 40 years. And that's the book of Judges. And so in the middle of the book of Judges, we saw the book of Ruth and what happens there with Ruth. She's just tucked in there somewhere. And now we are in this book that we call 1 Samuel. Well, what's going on with 1 Samuel? Well, we looked at Samuel. We looked at the way that it started with this lady named Hannah, and she used to go with her family, and they would worship the Lord every year, but she didn't have any children, and she was crying out to the Lord. And the prophet there, he saw her, and he told her, the Lord will give you a child, bless you. And so God gives her a child, and she doesn't come to worship for a few years. She just stays with the child and raises a child, because she said, if you give me a child, I'll give that child to the Lord all of his days. Well, that child becomes Samuel, and we're reading now the book of 1 Samuel, and then there's the book of 2 Samuel. Well, what's so significant about this? Well, the boy grows up, he learns to hear from the Lord, and we looked at that part where he learns to hear from the Lord. And the prophet that he's serving under Eli, the priest, the prophet, he dies. And now Samuel's sort of the priest prophet in the land. And the people come to him in chapter 8, and they're going to ask for a king. And so what happens here, this begins the rule of the kings. This begins the era of the kings. They're going to turn away from just having God as their king, only having God as their king. And they want an earthly king. They want an earthly king. They ask Samuel to anoint a king, and Samuel's not happy about it at all. That's where we pick up. Chapter 8, 1 Samuel. When Samuel grew old, he'd been there for a long time, serving under that guy and Eli, and then Eli dies. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. And the name of the firstborn was Joel, and the second one was Abijah, and they served at Beersheba. But his sons didn't follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. So he wanted them to help, in judging and serving people, but they turned away. So all the elders of Israel gathered, and they came to Samuel at Ramah, and they said to him, "You're old, and your sons don't follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." Oh, we want to be like all the other nations. And when they said, "Give us a king to lead us," this displeased Samuel. He didn't like it at all. So he prayed to the Lord and told the Lord what they were doing. And the Lord said, "Well, listen to all that the people are saying to you. It's not you they've rejected, but they've rejected me as their king." There's the key. That's a hinge right there. That's a huge verse in understanding all of the scripture. They haven't rejected you. They've rejected me as their king. God will no longer be their king. They'll have an earthly king. And as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they're doing the same thing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. So go ahead and do it, but let them know ahead of time what they're asking for and what's going to happen. Samuel told all the words that the Lord said to the people. They were asking for a king. And he said, "This is what the king will do." Well, this is what kings do. And Jesus said, you know that the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, take advantage of them. This is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. This is what he'll do. He'll take your sons, and he'll make them serve with chariots and horses, and they'll run in front of his chariots. The king will come into the city, and he'll have your sons running in front saying, "The king is here, the king is here." And some he'll assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and others will plow his ground and reap his harvest. Still others will make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. Everyone's going to be serving the king. Everyone's going to be serving the king. Some of them are going to be in government, and some of them are going to be having those places of authority, ruling over people. Others he's going to make farmers so he can have a lot of food to feed all of the people who are working for him. Others he's going to send them out to go make weapons so they can fight the other nations. He'll take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. They're all going to be serving him. And boy, they're going to cook a lot of food every day and bake a lot of food every day for the king and all of his entourage. And he will take the best of your fields and your vineyards. And he'll take the best of your olive groves and give them to his attendants. He'll take your stuff and he'll give it to those who are serving with him. Well, same. He'll take 1/10 of your grain of your vintage and he'll give it to his officials and attendants. Your male and female servants and the best of your cattle and your donkeys, he'll take for his own. He'll take it all. He'll take 1/10 of your flocks, and you yourselves, you will become slaves. And when the day comes, you'll cry out for relief from the king you've chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. You're going to get the king. You're going to get it. You're going to get the government you asked for. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, "We want a king over us." Then we'll be like the other nations with a king to lead us out and to go into and fight our battles. Oh man, forsaking the Lord. And when Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. And the Lord said, listen to him, give him a king. Then Samuel said to the Israelites, everyone go back to your own. And in chapter 9, he's going to anoint the king. This begins the era of the kings. This begins the time when no longer is only God their king, but they have earthly kings. And we're going to enter into a whole new period of history. So we will look at the next chapter as we go along. Another chapter coming right after this one. It's really important as well. Hey, so bless you guys. Let's just keep moving through. And remember, this is a really critical time. This changes everything. They now have kings instead of just God. Hey, bless you. Let's move along.